Qualitative coding is a topic that often leaves students feeling a little confused. In this video, we'll explore a popular coding technique called in vivo coding. We'll unpack what it is, which types of projects it's well suited to, and how to approach it, along with loads of practical examples. Let's do it. Hey, my name's Emma, and today we're gonna unpack in vivo coding. This video is based on a lesson from our popular short course, Qualitative Research Bootcamp. So, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, be sure to check that out. To say thanks for watching this video, we've got a special 50% discount offer just for you. You can find the link to that down in the description. All right, so let's start by asking the question, what is in vivo coding? To do this, it's useful to first take a step back and define what exactly we mean by coding more broadly. At the most basic level, qualitative coding is the process of labeling and categorizing textual data. The coding process is foundational because it sets the scene for you to start identifying themes and patterns within your data, and ultimately extracting insights from it. In other words, coding is the first step in the broader qualitative analysis process. Now, when it comes to qualitative coding, there are 3 different approaches that you can take: inductive, deductive, and hybrid. Going the inductive route means that you'll allow your codes to emerge from the dataset itself, based on the patterns you encounter as you review it. Conversely, going the deductive route means that you'll approach the dataset with a predetermined set of codes based on an existing theory or theoretical framework. Last but certainly not least, taking a hybrid or abductive approach would involve blending the 2 approaches to get the best of both worlds. Which coding approach to take will depend on your specific research aims and research questions. If you're keen to learn more about how to go about choosing the right approach for your project, we've got another video covering just that. You can find the link in the description. All right, so now that we've defined what coding is and what the 3 approaches are, we can explore in vivo coding specifically. So what exactly do we mean by in vivo coding? The term in vivo originates from Latin, where it means within the living. More practically though, it refers to the act of studying something in its natural environment. So, within the context of coding, in vivo refers to a technique where you use the participant's own words as your codes, as opposed to creating codes based on your interpretation of their words. For example, imagine you're undertaking a study where you're exploring people's experiences of urban gardening. While interviewing participants, you might find that participants regularly refer to their garden as their little oasis. In this case, you could use the term little oasis as an actual code. In other words, you'd be using your participants' terminology as opposed to your own terminology as your codes. Now, you're probably wondering why someone would take such a stripped-down approach to coding, right? Well, one benefit of in vivo coding is that it helps you avoid inferring meaning by staying as close to the original phrases as possible. This is particularly useful for studies where the subtleties of language and the specific expressions that people use are central to the research aims. That probably sounds a bit fluffy, so let's look at a practical example. Imagine a study where you're exploring cancer patients' perceptions of their treatment journey. In this case, participants might describe their chemotherapy sessions as going into battle. This expression is rich with connotations of struggle, resistance, and resilience. In other words, this specific choice of words reveals the patient's perspective on their treatment, but it also frames it within a context of conflict and endurance. By using this term verbatim as a code, all of this richness can be carried through to the analysis without risk of dilution. In vivo coding can also be useful when your data are derived from participants who speak different languages or come from different cultures, as it reduces the risk of you interpreting the data through your own cultural lens. For example, English speakers typically view the future as in front of them and the past as behind them. However, this isn't true for all cultures. Speakers of Aymara in the Bolivian Andes view the past as in front of them and the future as behind them. In a situation like this, in vivo coding would help avoid misinterpretation due to this subtle but significant cultural difference. To sum up then, in vivo coding helps ensure that your analysis is deeply rooted in the actual perspectives of the participants by using their exact words or phrases as codes. Simple, but powerful. So, now that we've explained what in vivo coding is, the logical next question is, how do you actually do in vivo coding? Just like any type of inductive coding, the first step of the in vivo coding process is to gather and prepare your dataset. This may consist of interview transcripts, field notes, or even secondary data such as organizational documents or reports. From there, you'll start with an initial read-through to familiarize yourself with the dataset. This read-through will help you to understand the overall content and context of the dataset as a whole, as opposed to getting tunnel vision on one or two portions of the dataset. From there, you can note down any initial patterns that you notice and start making a list of in vivo codes based on these patterns. Remember, these codes need to be lifted directly from the text, verbatim. Once you've built a preliminary list of codes, you can start your second reading and begin applying those codes to your dataset. As you do this, you'll likely notice new potential codes emerging. If so, you can add these to your list and apply them to your dataset accordingly. This will usually mean cycling back and forth through your dataset to ensure that you code all the data consistently. Now, once you're comfortable that you've applied your codes consistently, you can start grouping them into meaningful categories. This process is called code categorization. Importantly, these categories should reflect broader patterns that are relevant to your research aims. Let's look at an example to see what this might look like in practice. Imagine you're coding interview transcripts from employees discussing their experiences and feelings about their workplace culture. In doing so, you could group codes such as walking on eggshells, fighting fires, and dropping the ball under a category titled emotional climate. Similarly, you could categorize codes such as like a family and supporting each other under the title of support and relationships. Now, it's useful to point out that there are many different ways in which you could categorize any dataset. In other words, it's possible to identify a range of different threads that run through a dataset depending on your perspective. So what's important at this stage is to develop categories that have a clear link to your research aims and research questions. For example, if you aim to explore emotional states, you could categorize your codes based on broad emotional states, such as anger, fear, surprise, or disgust. Once you've applied your codes and categorized them into logical groups, your dataset should, in principle, be ready for analysis. This might take the form of something like thematic analysis or content analysis, depending on your specific research aims. Now, if all of this sounds a little bit intimidating, be sure to check out our private coaching service, where we can hold your hand through the coding process step by step. Alternatively, we have a done-for-you coding service, where our qualitative experts meticulously code your data, laying a rock-solid foundation for your analysis. You can find the links in the description. All right, we've covered quite a bit of ground here, so let's do a quick recap. At the simplest level, in vivo coding is an inductive coding technique that uses verbatim extracts from the dataset as codes. This makes it well suited to studies where the subtleties of language and the specific expressions people use are central to the research aims. It's also useful when samples span across multiple languages and cultures. Of course, in vivo coding is just one of many options, and it can be combined with other coding techniques for a more multi-dimensional analysis. If you're interested in learning more about the other coding techniques, check out the links below. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons so that we can keep you posted with the latest tutorials, tips, and tools. And be sure to check out this video next.